Back here in Washington, Chris Matthews, President Carter, lying in state, and leaders from across the world coming to pay their tribute to the 39th president, a man that you knew well and who you worked with and for. Tell us your thoughts.
Well, I was there last night in the Capitol, in the Rotunda, a beautiful setting, if you will, and the casket is there. And you try to bring it all back, and it's very hard to bring it back. A living man who you knew, as I was a speechwriter on Air Force One and occasionally in the Oval Office. And I have to tell you, you can't cry over this. I mean, he lived to be 100. That's about the limit for most people, by beyond the limit. And he lived an extraordinary life. I mean, he left younger than us, all of us. He left the White House in his mid-50s.
Right.
And he lived all these years since. There are people that, like Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, said I was, 4 years old when this guy was president. He's 4 years old. He was like one of the babies the presidents kiss when they walk by.
Right.
And here he is alive. And Carter lived through all of that, through the turmoil and the disappointment of his administration. He had to live through all that. He knew what the inflation and the high interest rates did and the hostage taking. I can give you a lot of reasons for it, the guy. I've been thinking through this so many times. One, he believed in peace. He believed in putting the problems of the country behind him. When he came into office, he said, I'm going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue to show the American people I'm not afraid of them. Well, presidents should be afraid of them. Some people in the country who are dangerous people, some of them. But he also said, I'm going to thank Jerry Ford for saving the country after Watergate, thanked him openly in his inaugural address. He pardoned all the Vietnam resistors. He said, we've had enough of the Vietnam debate. It's over. We're going to let these people come back to America from Canada and elsewhere, and we're going to end this debate right now. I'm pardoning them. That's the end of it. He went to the Egyptians, who had fought 4 wars with Israel, 48, 56, 67, 73. All those wars were really launched by Egypt. He said, I'm going to end those wars, and no more wars since. No more Arab wars against it.
And by the way, there were so many times when Camp David was about to break apart, and it was Jimmy Carter that kept them together. It was also Jimmy Carter who, at the same time, normalized relations with China and created the world that we live in now, a world of globalization.
And negotiated the Panama Canal Treaty.
Well, to end the war with the potential threat of Latin American terrorism, and we'll see what comes down with Trump. But then there's an amazing moment during that. He took the Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin up to Gettysburg. It's not far away from Camp David. And he wanted to show them about our battle. And it said, battles can end. We can end these wars, these fights. And one of these amazing things is he said, all the guys coming from Egypt were all military people, because it was a military regime, a good one, but a military regime. And Menachem Begin had come up as a terrorist fighter, basically, for Israel in the beginning in 48. He didn't know anything about this military history. But when they got to the place where Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, out of nowhere, this little guy quoted every word of the Gettysburg Address out loud. He just started reciting it to all these generals and everybody else there. And then Carter says, I get choked up just thinking about that moment where this little guy who just made a point of memorizing one of our greatest speeches. But again, it was peace. And then he tried to find peace with Iran and the hostage crisis. I think he made one mistake. He made the hostages the most important thing in the world, not the issue of really ridiculing the United States and burning our flag and trooping them around with blindfolds on. He said, they're the most important people here. I'm going to get them back alive. And to do that, he never went to war.
He sacrificed his presidency by not going to war.
Right.
And those hostages came home.
All of them.
Alive.
Yeah.
Every last one. And he didn't have to trade arms to do it. He negotiated, and it finally got done. Chris Matthews, thank you so much. Susan Page, thank you as well. And